The Russians are coming.
The Russians are coming.
The Russians have landed.
Just don't panic.
The Russians are coming.
They'll be shooting people in the streets.
Jeste li sada ili ste ikada bili član komunističke partije? 1000 Amerikanaca morali su odgovoriti na to pitanje tijekom razdoblja antikomunističke paranoje. Posvuda prisutna, od guma za žvakanje do hollywoodskih filmova, antikomunistička propaganda postaće jedna od pokretačkih sila američke politike i obsesija sposobnih političara. Lov na vještice fascinirat će Ameriku i Hollywood više od 50 godina.
Propaganda is truth made into fantasy. During the war, after the Hitler-Stalin pact fell apart and they became our allies out of necessity, they were not just sanitized, they were romanticized, which actually was consistent with the way many Americans, liberal, progressive Americans, felt about Russia.
Out of the turmoil of a world at war comes a romantic adventure of such infinite beauty and tenderness that it will win a lasting place among the screen's great love stories.
You've done a dreadful thing to me, my dear, dear Nina. You taught me to love life again.
Oh, darling.
Days of Glory introduces two great new stars, Tumanova of the Ballet Russe and Broadway's distinguished stage star Gregory Peck, in an exciting story of a man who learned the idealism of love, of a woman who learned the realism of war.
Pro-Soviet film production was something that is really the most forgotten part now of what happened in this whole story. Pro-Soviet movies, B pictures, a B picture meaning low-budget picture, were produced by Hollywood. At that point, it was in our interest to begin making propaganda vehicles to get the support of the American people. Why? Because we were raising money to send over to Russia. We were sending them weapons, billions of dollars of aid, and that had to have a support of the American people at some level, or else, you know, the Congress that was doing it would be in trouble. So now you have your propaganda entertainments to show how heroic the Russian people were in fighting our common enemy, the Nazis.
Mission to Moscow is my report to the American people as ambassador of the United States to the Soviet Union. I wrote it as I saw it and lived it. Warner Brothers have courageously filmed it, true to the history as I saw it in the making.
Mission to Moscow, the behind-the-scenes story of every world-shaking crisis of our day, the cataclysmic events which changed the entire course of human history. Behind the walls of the Kremlin, you'll learn the secret of the Russian power that smashed the Nazi tide. You'll learn for the first time the whole shocking truth about the plot that set off the powder keg of the world.
So you were working out a deal? Naturally. With representatives of Germany?
Of Germany and Japan.
What happened is the further you went through the course of the war, the more major studios and major movie stars got involved. So just a couple years later, MGM, which was the #1 studio, Warner Brothers, another big studio, they began making movies like Mission to Moscow and Song of Russia, and, you know, Robert Taylor, a huge action star, handsome leading man, visiting Moscow as a musician, and he falls in love with this Russian girl and all this.
If we were in America and I were asked to describe you, I'd say, what a girl.
That would be very nice to hear, even in Moscow.
I mean, you can call it propaganda, but it also was true. You know, they were fighting heroically, and of course they were fighting to save their own country, but so what? And And that enabled us ultimately to win the war. So in Hollywood, there was no reason for the studios and the movie stars not to make these pictures like Mission to Moscow and Song of Russia and all of those.
You are the first American I've ever met with a soul. It has a strange effect on me.
Listen, Theodore, you know, I wasn't figuring on marriage.
Lucky for you, I'm the practical one. We must get married. It is the only way we can get permission to leave Russia.
What? You leave Russia? For where?
To America.
When we won the war and the powers sat down to divide up the after-war scenario, you had Churchill and Stalin and FDR, and Stalin kept saying, you know, I must have this, I must have that, I must have this, I must have that. And he ended up with, you know, kind of, let's say 2/3 of everything instead of 1/3. Right after that, the Iron Curtain descended. And all of a sudden, everything that had happened for the past 5 years was reversed. So no more good feelings about our Soviet allies. It all changed 180 degrees. And all of a sudden, everybody who had helped the war effort was put in the position of defending. Why did you help the war effort? Look at this. They're communists who are trying to take over the world now. The Iron Curtain has come down. That was Churchill's famous phrase. What were you thinking?
Godine 1947. službeno je proglašen hladni rat. Američka vlada i FBI posvuda vide komuniste. Paranoja zahvaća velik dio Amerike koji strahuje od atomske bombe. Počinju se množiti propagandni filmovi, čija je svrha da Amerikanci budu na oprezu od komunističke opasnosti.
The opposing point of view in this conflict rests on a fundamentally different vision of man. As a creature not of God, but of the state. In this system, the value of individual man diminishes sharply, and the state is all important. The state will run his life for him, his political life, his business life, his social life.
Well, propaganda to work has to be everywhere. Propaganda is advertising. And advertising means you have to manipulate and massage the mind.
The survival town Atom Test measured a model village in the Nevada desert against the awesome power of nuclear energy. Buildings of various materials went up. $1 million worth of equipment was installed, including lifelike mannequins, and tons of food to measure the contamination caused by radiation. The big dolls were survival town's sole inhabitants.
During the Red Scare, there were lots of opportunistic companies that felt, okay, well, on one hand, we should warn against the evils of communism and do this American way thing. And on the other, we can make some money doing it as well, because we'll sell bubblegum cards, or we'll sell games, or we'll sell books.
Propaganda je posvuda, čak i u gumama za žvakanje u kojima se nalaze sličice Staljina i Maa, prikazanih poput demona.
During the 50s, you know, we were brought up to believe that this communism was bad, that because they had the atom bomb, because we had the atom bomb, there was going to be a war inevitably. And when I was a kid, that was it. You know, I figured, why do my homework if there's going to be a war? Combine the ideological issues, you know, communism versus capitalism, which was never cut and dry, with the idea of annihilation, the arms race. And that was a real thing.
Upravo u tome kontekstu lukavi političari nastoje iskoristiti situaciju. Senator Joe McCarthy shvaća da će mnogo lakše zadobiti pozornost javnosti optužujući hollywoodske zvijezde nego nepoznate ljude ili vojne osobe. U listopadu 1947. Odbor za ispitivanje antiameričke djelatnosti počinje sa saslušanjima o tobožnjoj prisutnosti komunističkih utjecaja i propagande u Hollywoodu. Američka javnost granuta. U Hollywoodu su bili komunisti.
And I want to assure you that I will not be deterred.
By 1947, the House Un-American Activities Committee had convened, and they started calling the Hollywood heads of studios and big star actors up to testify. Why did you make this? Why did you make that? What were you thinking? What were you trying to do? Didn't you realize this was pro-Russia? And they were saying, well, yes, that we were told to do that. They were our allies. We were supposed to do that. And one famous exchange was Jack Warner saying, well, FDR invited me down to Washington and I had a meeting with him and he asked me to make more of these pictures that were pro-Soviet. But he's dead. He can't back up that story. It seems so bizarre to say Jack Warner, who was hardly a crazy liberal, is sitting up there defending why he had his Warner Brothers movie stars doing what FDR, the President of the United States, told him to do. It's in a way, it's laughable. So while Jack Warner was not censured to the degree that he went to prison or anything of that sort for making Mission to Moscow, many of the actors were put in an exposed position. Now, some of them, like Robert Taylor, who had been in Song of Russia, sat there on the witness stand and said, I always hated those guys. You know, they made me make this movie, which of course they could do back then. The studios controlled you completely. They made me make this movie, but I never wanted to, and I never trusted Stalin and the Russians. They said, thank you very much, and off he went. And of course there were arch conservatives in Hollywood. But for the ones who didn't have a good excuse or even refused to even pretend to make an excuse, there was trouble. And a lot of the actors ended up blacklisted for years because they had appeared in these movies, or the screenwriters wrote the movies, or the directors directed the movies. They couldn't defend themselves because it seems impossible now, because you're just saying this was 5 years ago. How do you forget 5 years ago we were fighting side by side with the Russians? I mean, come on. Humphrey Bogart and, of course, Lauren Bacall, they were liberals. And famously, they were not going to be intimidated. They took a train to protest all the liberal actors and directors, John Huston, in 1947, the first wave of HUAC hearings. They got into huge trouble. The press was not sympathetic. They were intimidated, and Bogart had to have his press machine put out pieces saying, I'm no communist, because simply by protesting against the process of the House Un-American Activities Committee, he was labeled a communist sympathizer, if not an actual communist. So if you can make Humphrey Bogart back down, then you know it's serious, because he was always the iconoclastic man of Hollywood.
Hollywood je podijeljen. Postoje oni koji surađuju i denunciraju druge, kao što su Elijah Kazan, Robert Rosen, Edward Dimitrik i Gary Cooper. Pa čak i Ronald Reagan, čija upletenost otkrivena tek mnogo godina poslije, kad su FBI-evi tajni dosjei napokon predočeni javnosti. U to doba FBI otvara dosije broj 1382196 o jednom glumcu. Visina 185 cm, težina 79 kg. boja očiju plava. Ime? Ronald Reagan. Hoover zna da je Reagan, koji je u to doba demokrat, bio povezan s mafijom preko svojeg prijatelja i odvjetnika Sidneya Korshaka. Kad je Reagan postao predsjednik udruge filmskih glumaca, koji bi trebao braniti svoje članove od odbora, Hoover ga je obavijestio da zna za njegovu povezanost s mafijom. Reagan je shvatio impliciranu prijetnju te je promijenio stranu i postao Hooverov agent. U tajnosti mu je dao popis glumaca i glumica za koje sumnja da su komunisti, premda i dalje službeno bio predsjednik njihove udruge. Godine 1952. Reagan se zaljubio u mladu glumicu Nancy Davis, koja je bila na popisu zbog pohađanja komunističkih skupova. Reagan je brzo našao drugu glumicu s istim imenom za koju nitko nikad prije nije čuo i tako sprao ljagu s imena svoje nove djevojke. Hoover je zatvorio slučaj Nancy Davis.
The paranoia at that time was quite real. I mean, people were losing their jobs. People were losing their livelihoods. People were killing themselves during the Red Scare. And if you worked for certain organizations, they forced you to go before the committee. You know, it was not we were the land of the free and the home of the brave, but we were cowards when it came to this kind of ideological ethnic cleansing, so to speak. You know, it was, let's get all the lefties out of any kind of business where they're going to affect the culture and the society.
Filmska industrija strahuje da bi javnost mogla početi bojkotirati Kina. Šefovi studija organiziraju sastanak u hotelu Waldorf Astoria u New Yorku. Donose odluku da neće angažirati komuniste ni njihove simpatizere i tako ih stavljaju na crnu listu. Cecil B. DeMille jedan je od najgorljivijih antikomunista. Jedino je Samuel Goldwyn odbio potpisati deklaraciju izjavljujući: to što radite pogrešno je, neću to potpisati. Ti ljudi nisu ništa učinili da bi zaslužili biti na crnoj listi. Ja sam protiv toga. On je bio jedini. Crna lista je sastavljena. 19 scenarista i redatelja pozvano je u Washington pred odbor zadužen za progon komunista. Svi se odlučuju pozvati na 5. amandman i odbiti odgovoriti na pitanje odbora: jeste li sada ili ste ikada bili član komunističke partije? Prva 10 složni su u solidarnosti. Ali 11. nitko drugi doli Bertolt Brecht na posljedku odlučuje svjedočiti i odgovara: ne, nisam član komunističke partije, te time ruši obranu ostale 10. Odbor mu čestita i Brecht sljedećeg dana odlazi u Pariz. Odbor prekida ispitivanje te osuđuje preostalu 10 na zatvorsku kaznu od godinu dana jer su odbili svjedočiti. Tako su postali poznati kao slavna hollywoodska 10.
Well, Dalton Trumbo, who was, a great film writer and a great thinker, he was smeared, he was blacklisted. He got top billing in red channels, which was this book that was published on a regular basis that listed everybody who was considered a communist, and it was kind of like the phone directory. If you wanted to hire somebody, you looked in red channels or you called the red channels people on the phone.
Dalton Trumbo, osuđen na godinu dana zatvora, dobiva otkaz u MGM-u. Fox otpušta scenarista Ringa Lardnera. Ironično, 23 godine poslije upravo će on spasiti taj studio scenarijem za Mesh, koji će režirati Robert Altman i za koji će Lardner osvojiti Oscar. RKO otpušta redatelja Edwarda Dmitrika, a i mnogi drugi dobivaju otkaz. Charlie Chaplin prisiljen je odseliti se u Europu i više nikad neće živjeti u SAD-u. 73 svjedoka denunciraju više od 200 ljudi koji preko noći ostaju bez posla. Do 1954. na crnoj listi nalaze se 324 imena.
Many careers were ruined, and some of them, like Dalton Trumbo, lasted long enough to come back again and work in mainstream Hollywood. He wrote Spartacus.
And he made movies, but he made them under other names. I think he even won an Academy Award under one of his false names. But he was one of the lucky ones. If you have talent and people want you, they'll figure out a way to buck the system.
He won an Oscar during the 50s, and he had used a pen name for it, for The Brave One. and somebody else had to go up and get it. So it's like that Woody Allen movie, The Front, where you hired somebody to be your front because you had been blacklisted and could not show your face. And of course, in The Front, Zero Mostel is a blacklisted actor who's eventually commits suicide because his life's been ruined to such an extent.
Fairy tales can come true. It can happen to you if you're young at heart.
We are investigating the communist conspiracy in the entertainment world.
In 1953, there was such a list, and some of this man's friends were on it.
Mr. Prince, do you know Alfred Miller? Mr. Prince, did you know Techie Brown? Do you know Florence Barrett? Are you refusing to answer?
Howard, if you don't answer, they can send you to jail.
Howard, they won't buy my scripts. I'm on a blacklist. You know what that means? You want to put my name on your scripts? It's not that simple. I write the scripts. I send them in under your name. They buy the scripts, right? It's perfect.
You're not a writer.
No, I couldn't write a grocery list.
You never wrote any of those scripts?
Nothing. Not one. I'm practically illiterate.
Fairy tales can come true. It can happen to you if you're young at heart. For it's hard, you will find, to be narrow of mind if you're young at heart.
Right after the war, we started making anti-communist movies. You know, the Nazis were no longer our enemy, the communists were. So, you know, I Married a Communist Spy and films like that became the favorite fare of Hollywood. And they did it in part to assuage the committee. You know, they did these films not because they felt they would make a ton of money. They did these films so that they could be left alone to do their other more benign films. So it's always interesting to see the progression of American thought through the movies.
Is that?
Hollywood never does everything all together. There was a wave of anti-communist movies, but again, they were B movies, and you're really not talking about big commercial successes.
Do 1953. kad izlazi Krađa u Južnoj ulici, antikomunistička propaganda već je duboko ukorijenjena u SAD-u. Svaki zaposlenik filmskog studija mora prisegnuti da nije komunist, da nikad nije bio član partije, da mu nijedan prijatelj nije komunist i da će prokazati bilo koga tko bi mogao to biti.
From the bright lights of Broadway through the subway undergrounds to the gutters of South Street, they followed this woman, the B-girl who became a sitting duck to track down her man with a caress, a kiss, and a promise. As the whole underworld joins in a scorching counterblast against the spy menace in Pick Up on South Street.
U Francuskoj komunistička partija postala prilično moćna od kraja Drugog svjetskog rata i američki antikomunistički filmovi često su promijenjeni u sinkroniziranim verzijama. Tako je film Samuela Fullera, Krađa u Južnoj ulici u Francuskoj, preimenovan u Luku droge, a komunistički špijuni preobraženi u krijumčare droge.
That film you stole had government information on it.
That girl was carrying TNT and it's gonna blow up right in your face.
None of them were big hits, big box office hits. People didn't take them especially seriously, no. And maybe they didn't even like them especially. The Red Menace in 1949, My Son John in 1952. There were many of these, and some of them, like I Married a Communist, were so goofy that, again, you watched them almost for the fun of it, because it was like a communist gangster movie. Like the communists are gangsters trying to take over the United States, which actually was the plot of one of Mickey Spillane's big best-selling books, too, in that period, One Lonely Night. But other movies were not done in such a black and white way, but it was never a huge wave. I mean, the big Hollywood movies were Audrey Hepburn and William Holden and Cary Grant, and I mean, that's what the big commercial successes were. It wasn't something like I Married a Communist.
Don't! No! 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 No!
All right. Tell Banning I saw what he wanted me to see. Now I'll find my own way out.
Howard Hughes, koji je na čelu kompanije RKO i poznat je po paranoidnom strahu od komunista, odlučio je financirati niz antikomunističkih propagandnih filmova, kao što su Udala sam se za komunista i Pilot mlažnjaka. Ti mu filmovi služe kao test lojalnosti za njegove zaposlenike. Tko god odbije raditi na njima, odmah dobiva otkaz. Ali ti filmovi ne postižu uspjeh u kinima. Primjerice, Udala sam se za komunista, koji je Hughes poslije preimenovao u Žena na doku 13 i izbrisao sve referiranje na komunizam. Ili drugi filmovi kao što su Moj sin John iz 1952. i Veliki Jim McLean, u kojem John Wayne glumi istražitelja u službi antikomunističkog odbora na Havajima.
And it was a big job that brought Jim McLean to Hawaii, bigger than any he'd ever tackled before, because the islands we'd fought so hard to protect not too long ago were in danger again. For behind the splendor of Diamond Head, the glamour of Waikiki, the exciting tempo of Pearl Harbor, an insidious new enemy was at work. In waterfront dives, McLean felt the intruder's hand, but he could never see his face. But each road suddenly came to a dead end.
I have subpoenas for everyone in this room.
You're pretty tough when you're talking to some guy that's only half your size, ain't you?
You just got big enough.
But you'd start getting the anti-communist rhetoric in so many different media. Film was only one of those media. You'd get it on television, you'd get it in plays, in books, paperback tawdry novels, comic books. And all of this was in response to not just the political times that we were entering into a Cold War, but get the committee, get the investigators, get the witch hunters off our backs.
I'm John Wayne. Is there any better or equal hope in the world, Lincoln asked, than the ultimate justice of the people? We Americans believe there is not. The stonework of our national life is made of this belief. We believe in many things, but this belief that man is a responsible being bears out our own unique stamp as a nation. As a people, we are active and often noisy. We are proud. We are sentimental. Beauty is of national concern to us. We are all these things and many more, but above everything else, we are free. We believe in the ultimate justice which we as free men can create. Our heritage of freedom is our most priceless possession. Men before us have died to keep it alive, and men in our times have done the same. But although men have died to preserve it, we may die again.
You still had J. Edgar Hoover finding communists everywhere he looks around, under the beds and so forth. But at the same time, you can watch Sid Charisse slowly melt the ice for Fred Astaire and see that the American way is the best way. You know, Ninotchka, the romantic comedy with Garbo from 1939, shows up again in 1957 as Silk Stockings with Fred Astaire, and now it's Sid Charisse in a musical version where she's the Russian apparatchik. So does that mean that there's no more feeling that there's a Cold War. No, not at all, because at that point in 1957, everyone was terrified of Khrushchev. You know, Stalin, of course, was so scary. Then he dies in 1953, and there's a little changing of the guard a few times, but finally Khrushchev emerges, and pretty soon he's the one that every American is terrified of.
After breakfast, during which the head of 20th Century Fox Studios and Nikita Khrushchev had an animated discussion, the president of the USSR visited studios where movies were being filmed. He met several artists, including Marilyn Monroe.
Premda je SAD drhti pri pomisli na komuniste, to ne spriječava Hollywood da pozove Nikitu Hruščova da posjeti Foxov studio tijekom službenog posjeta Americi 1959. Na snimanju filma Can-Can dočekuju ga Shirley MacLaine, Frank Sinatra, Louis Jourdan i Maurice Chevalier, dok se lov na vještice u Hollywoodu nastavlja.
Khrushchev definitely kept the element of fear alive, because even though we know now much of what he did was a bluff, you know, the Russian army, the Russian military, the resources, they had almost nothing. But to us, it was, you know, the race, the arms race, the space race. We considered them our equal, and we were always worried about them being our superior. You know, the Cold War, it goes on well into the 1960s. Don't forget, you also have China emerging. So if you aren't scared enough of Stalin, or you're not scared enough of Khrushchev and banging the shoe and we will bury you and all of this, you know, then you have Mao, who of course was a big problem for Khrushchev, but we didn't know that. Only years later did we find out that, very cleverly, Nikita Khrushchev was making a big show that he never could have backed up with his lack of resources, but he certainly fooled us. Cuban Missile Crisis worked out, luckily, but we were waiting every day for the whole thing to start World War III.
Castro marks the second anniversary of his revolution with the biggest military parade ever staged in Cuba, featuring tanks and other heavy weapons from Russia and Red Czechoslovakia. Shortly afterwards, Castro demanded the United States Embassy drastically reduce its staff to 11 persons. It was the last straw in his long campaign of provocation and harassment. President Eisenhower broke off diplomatic relations with a message read by Press Secretary Hagerty.
There is a limit to what the United States in self-respect can endure. That limit has now been reached.
I was 11 at that time for the Cuban Missile Crisis, and I can tell you, we weren't laughing. I mean, we were scared. I was of the generation where in the first grade we did the duck and cover thing under our desk. You know, just think about this now. What was that for, the duck and cover? It was so that if there was a nuclear attack and a bomb landed right through the roof of your school, you would be under your desk doing this so that you wouldn't get hurt. So, okay, so what happens to the nuclear bomb because you're ducked under your little wooden desk? I mean, that's what I mean. It's ridiculous.
Remember what to do, friends. Now tell me right out loud. What are you supposed to do when you see the flash?
So much of this is funny, but we weren't laughing on these things, and there was nothing funny about the Cuban Missile Crisis. There really were people who built bomb shelters, and the civil defense programs that the government was maintaining and promoting to the American people, you know, they were telling you, buy a year's worth of canned food so you can live in your bunker until the radiation goes away. I mean, like, what? But the bomb shelter people were there, and some of those were, you know, nutty people who were crazy paranoid, but some of them weren't, I think.
Paranoja je na vrhuncu kada John Frankenheimer režira Kandidata iz Mandžurije. U U njemu Lawrence Harvey glumi veterana iz Korejskog rata kojem su komunisti isprali mozak kako bi ubio predsjednika SAD-a. Komunistički mediji kritizirali su film kao otrovan i podao napad kojemu je cilj iskoristiti napete odnose između SAD-a i Sovjetskog saveza.
And it was kind of very serious. You know, it wasn't about irony at all until there were films like Dr. Strangelove that kind of began to break the Cold War stranglehold on America and make it into satire.
I shouldn't tell you this, ma'am, Drake, but you're a good officer and you have a right to know. It looks like we're in a shooting war.
Hell. All the Russians involved, sir?
Well, boys, I reckon this is it. Nuclear combat toe-to-toe with the Ruskies.
Dr. Strangelove.
Or how I learned to stop worrying and
love the bomb. A moving picture.
There were films like Failsafe, which were very serious, but they kind of twisted and turned around the idea. Yeah, there could be a war, but we could both be at risk, and we could both be the cause of such a war.
Kad je Lyndon Johnson postao predsjednički kandidat 1964. osigurao si je pobjedu ovom nevjerojatnom reklamom.
These are the stakes. To make a world in which all of God's children can live, or to go into the dark, we must either love each other or we must die.
So the Cold War started thawing on the screen when screenwriters coming out of that blacklisted period were able to start writing again in a progressive way. So in a weird sense, it was really true that there were all these lefties writing message films for Hollywood, but they were doing it in a very creative manner. And once they were able to be creative again, they started writing more message films.
Godine 1964. Sidney Lumet i scenarist Crne liste Walter Bernstein odlučili su snimiti film Kritična točka. U isto vrijeme Stanley Kubrick priprema film Dr. Strangelove prema romanu Crvena uzbuna u istome studiju Kolumbiji. Kubrick i Columbia odlučuju napasti autore filma Kritična točka zbog plagiranja. Dva scenarija gotovo su identična. No dok Kubrick humorom ističe psihopatsku narav vojske, Sidney Lumet rabi realizam u gotovo dokumentarističkom stilu.
So the fail-safe box. Open our operational orders.
Zapravo, film je toliko realan da američka vojska inzistira da Kolumbija stavi izjavu na špicu da je film fikcija i da se prikazani događaji nisu dogodili.
Technical state of war now exists.
Vojska također odbija dati dopuštenje da rabi bilo kakve snimke vojske, te čak cenzurira snimke.
This is General Bogan. Keep receiving, no matter what you hear. Do you understand? Keep receiving.
Kolumbija odlučuje odgoditi izlazak Kritične točke, dok Dr. Strangelove ne bude u kinima.
And there was always, you know, the studios were saying, okay, well, let's do these religious films like the Ten Commandments, but then other studios would have more message films. It's like Warner Brothers did, you know, more message films than Paramount or RKO. Soon, and after that, you know, you started getting independent directors who were doing their own thing.
Hello there, this is your man in Moscow, Carlton Kaduli. This year, an estimated 23,000 Americans will visit the Soviet Union as tourists. We're interested in finding how many Russians are planning to visit our shores. May we speak with you, sir?
If you're so able to, you can do it.
What is your name, if I may ask?
Yuri Rozanov.
Yuri Rozanov. May I call you Yuri?
You could call me by my nickname.
What's that?
You. Yes.
Well, thank you, you. Are you planning in the near future to visit our great country?
Indubitably not.
You don't plan to visit?
Not than your tintype.
Are you interested in seeing America?
Not for a minute. I have been there.
You have visited our fine country. When, sir?
I was there Sunday. Sunday a week.
You mean a week ago Sunday you were in America?
Sunday I was there.
Well, tell me, sir, how did you get there?
I got there, you guess.
Well, you were in a tour, an excursion?
No, I wasn't.
By plane?
No.
By boat?
Submarine.
That's hard to believe, sir. That's hard to believe.
It's an amazing story to behold, but we could demonstrate it to you.
Could you? Well, how could you demonstrate this?
We have photographs.
You have?
Moving.
Moving photographs?
Moving pictures.
Where will we see these?
Right here.
You took these pictures?
Indeed I did.
In color and Panavision?
Naturally, we invented it. You see, that is how we got to America.
The Russians have landed.
This whole danged island's under attack by Russians. The Russians have captured the airport.
Yeah. Listen, you guys, we've just got to get organized. For God's sake, we've got to get organized.
As you can imagine, we were not expected.
Don't fire until you see the light. Get out of the way!
You help us get boat quickly, otherwise there is World War III, and everybody is blaming you.
Well, The Russians Are Coming was a fabulous film. I think that really began to say, okay, we can laugh about this. When I was a kid, Khrushchev came to New York, and he docked over on 24th or 25th Street, his boat. And I lived on 20th Street, and we went to school on 20th Street. And we were let out one day because we were let out to go protest Khrushchev. And they didn't give us signs or anything, but we were told we could go to the docks and just go, boo, boo, boo. And I was going, boo, boo, boo. And there was a big, heavy New York cop. They used to wear these great coats, and, you know, they were all drunkards a little bit. And he looked down at me and said, why are you yelling? And I said, because it's Khrushchev. He says, so what's wrong with Khrushchev? He says, well, he's a bad man. I said, he's just a guy. And that was a cop. You know, and it kind of made me think, even at 8 years old or however old I was, that, yeah, you know, I'm being pushed into doing something that somebody else wants me to do. And that something else was, you know, be a tool of the propaganda.
U 60-ima špijunski tajni agenti postaju središnja figura u filmovima tog žanra, ali pojavljuju se dva tipa agenta. Prvi je super špijun kojeg utjelovljuje James Bond, glamurozni zavodnik koji se bori protiv ruskih neprijatelja koji prijete da će uništiti svijet. Drugi je tip realni i možda je antagonistička reakcija na prvome. Super špijunski filmovi, uključujući franšizu s agentom 007, postižu komercijalni uspjeh i unose revoluciju u taj žanr.
James Bond, that notorious, amazing Dr. No secret agent is back, and half the world is out to kill him. As he pits his murderous talents against the Iron Curtain, Agent 007 cuts an inimitable path through the palaces and boudoirs of espionage.
James, you're hurting me.
I'll do worse than that if you don't tell me. I'm doing this under orders I know, and what are they?
Even if you kill me, I can say nothing.
The James Bond thing was fun, but it was a comic book. And, you know, we like that yin and yang as consumers of culture. You know, we want that thing that we could look at and say, okay, this has gravitas. And so it's like listening to classical music. But we still like rock and roll, and not only that, we like pop. You know, we like novelty songs. And James Bond was really well-crafted novelty. I mean, it was wonderful. And then, of course, you know, to find Austin Powers as a takeoff on it, these things always spawn their own takeoffs. And Dr. Strangelove was a takeoff of 7 Days in May, of Failsafe, of On the Beach, all these nuclear movies that brought fear to our hearts.
U drugoj polovini 60-ih niz autora kao što su John le Carré, Len Dayton i Somerset Maugham počinju razotkrivati stvarnost hladnog rata i prikazivati svakodnevicu stvarnih špijuna. Špijun koji je došao iz hladnoće ili Hitchcockova Strgnuta zavjesa, mnogo su manje glamurozne inačice filmova istog žanra.
The book the world could not lay down now stands with the great motion pictures of all time. John le Carré's magnificent best-selling novel, The Spy Who Came In From the Cold.
What the hell do you think spies are? How big does a cause have to be before you kill your friends?
The spy is no longer a romantic. The spy is a really unfortunate. Well, it's the same with The Third Man. You know, The Third Man kind of made you feel really depressed and claustrophobic, and The Spy Who Came In From the Cold, and these are films about people who are depressing, you know, and live in these kind of imprisoned lives. So things changed in terms of the script writing because the writers were able to show more of their creative side and to show that their characters were not cardboard, they were human beings.
Potkraj 60. godina na špijunske su filmove utjecale promjene koje su se tada događale u Americi. Filmovi Prisluškivanje i Tri Kondorova dana odraz su tih promjena. Od tada se tajne službe doživljavaju kao opasne, a špijunski filmovi prikazuju nelagodu javnosti zbog miješanja tih službi u privatnost ljudi.
I shall resign the presidency effective at noon tomorrow.
This is a major. This is Joe Turner. Identification? My name is Turner. I work for you. Now listen.
Identify yourself.
What is your designation?
Condor.
Something has happened.
Section 9, Department 17. The section's been hit.
What level?
What level?
Level of damage.
Everybody. Dr. Lapp, Janice, Ray, Harold. Everybody is dead.
What is it? What is it? Are you damaged?
Damaged? No.
Are you armed? Identify the armament.
It's a .45 automatic. Will you guys bring me in, please? I'm not a field agent. I just read books.
We have games. What if? How many men? What would it take?
7 people killed. And you play games.
And the other side does too.
We always learned that Humphrey Bogart was the anti-hero. So the idea of the anti-hero started growing wings in the 60s, actually, when Humphrey Bogart became an icon for my generation. And anti-heroism became part of the vocabulary. So you started seeing these characters who were kind of caught off guard and became heroes, but they really weren't heroes. I mean, 3 Days of the Condor was one of those movies that I thought was really quite interesting because it wasn't ideological at all. We don't even know who spied against who, really. It was just about how you can get involved in this shit, and there's no real reason except you're involved. You're caught up in the vortex of this horrible experience. And so I think more and more the ideological element of spy movies or war movies get pushed away, and you get the human element, and the human element leads to this fact that you're in a cycle and you have no control over it. And the characters who are involved are not heroes, they're prisoners who are just trying to survive in some fashion. And sometimes their survival takes on this heroic context or this heroic aura, but they're not, you look at them and they're not really heroes.
This is a world of hidden mics and two-way mirrors. A world where nothing is private.
Do you think we can do this?
Later in the week.
Do you think we can do this?
Harry Cole is an expert. The best there is.
Let me tell you something about Harry Cole. The best, bar none. I'll drink to that.
Best what?
The best bugger on the West Coast.
What about me?
He can bug anybody, anytime, anywhere.
Nobody knows how you did it, though, Harry. It was the hell of a scandal, too.
Look, do you see him? The man with the hearing aid, like Charles. He's been following us all.
They're not people to him, just voices.
And the conversation, I mean, Gene Hackman is so the anti-hero. I mean, he goes beyond Bogart. You know, here's this guy who lives in this crappy loft and maybe gets laid every so often, but wears this crappy raincoat, and all of a sudden he's involved in this thing, and his conscience takes over. But he would much rather be somewhere else. Yeah, that's a terrific movie for showing how, you know, there is nothing special, there's nothing to aspire to in the world of spies or any kind of ideology.
Godine 1983. predsjednik Ronald Reagan pokrenuo je projekt Zvjezdani ratovi, opsežan svemirski program, čija je svrha bila potaknuti Sovjetski savez na financijski katastrofalno gomilanje oružja. Danas se smatra da je taj program pridonio padu Sovjetskog saveza, jer u samo nekoliko godina Reagan je pomogao srušiti zlo carstvo, kako ga je on nazivao, potičući vojno i gospodarsko nadmetanje koje ga je trebalo financijski uništiti. Upravo je u tom kontekstu John Milius režirao film Crvena zora, veoma paranoičan film o invaziji sovjetskih snaga na tlo SAD-a, zbog čega skupina tinejdžera, koju predvodi Patrick Swayze, osniva trupu gerilaca koja će pružiti otpor okupaciji.
What's going on here, my friend?
This is the emergency broadcast system. We are under attack by conventional forces of the Russian army. It is believed the lead waves were disguised as commercial charter flights. Communications have broken down with other parts of the country. Large areas of the Midwest may have been overrun.
They know who all of you are. They're looking for you.
The Cold War, you think of it as the distant past, and I guess as a Cold War, it's a distant past, but, you know, we still don't know what's going on really when you think about it. You look at the last 10 years, you know, we're not friends really with the Russian. They're still spies, and then every couple years there's another book that comes out that says, guess what? You know, he was a spy. And then there's 500 pages of documentation, and you say, okay, I didn't know that, but now I do. And I always think to myself, so what else don't we know? Because you know that 2 years from now there'll be something else we didn't know that all of a sudden, you know, here it is.